Well, good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our most recent edition of Shop Talk. I'm BK, the director of the Pennsylvania Park Maintenance Institute. And with us today, we're going to be focusing a bit on change management. COVID has forced our industry, along with many others, to make rapid changes. As someone needing to make changes within our organizations, we understand the challenges sometimes to help and support our staff through individual transitions. Sometimes change can be intensely traumatic. It involves loss, power, and prestige, sometimes even employment. The easier we can make these transitions for people, the sooner our organization will benefit and more likely we are to be successful. This is why I'm thankful and excited to introduce Gabriel Castillo, who's the founder and CEO of Rexstar Consulting, to kick off our first Shop Talk for 2021. And we're going to focus on accelerating change and increasing its success. Our learning objectives for this session are to learn about mistakes commonly seen while rolling out change, identify phases of change, and to discuss some of the biggest barriers creating change. Gabriel has been speaking nationally for about 10 years. His talent is combining education and entertainment to provide a memorable experience for our audiences. Spending the last 20 years coordinating logistics and marketing for educational programs, special events, and sport leagues, he has a wealth of knowledge to share with us today. So without further ado, I would like to ask Gabriel to kick it off for us.
All right, a little music to kind of get you in the spirit. Good afternoon, Pennsylvania Park Maintenance Institute members. I hope everyone is having a fantastic kickoff to this historic 2021 year. Obviously, thank you so much, Brian, for the introduction. Again, my name is Gabriel Castillo, and I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're at. So, with over 20 years of industry experience, I am an expert at transforming organizations for a thriving future. So we're going to be talking about the change curve, accelerating your success and increasing it. Now, I know a lot of you out there are not from the Pennsylvania area, so I do apologize that I've changed and upgraded this presentation for those in the Pennsylvania area. I actually was born in Pennsylvania, grew up in Texas, and now I call Chicago my home state. So you'll see some Chicago references in there as well. And for those who are in the Pennsylvania area, we got some stuff in there for you as well. So sit back, relax, and let's play ball.
As a kid, I spent a lot of time playing a lot of different sports, in particular the sport of baseball. And actually, me and my brother played a lot of catch together and home run derbies as kids. As we grew up and he grew older, he became a pretty decent pitcher, and we would spend many days playing catch and catching for him. Now, sometime in college, we were playing a game of catch. I was down in my stance ready to catch the ball. He sets up and winds up and delivers the pitch.
We lost your audio there.
Well, the good thing is I didn't break any bones. Just bruised my ego a little bit. But during the college
Can you
years,
still hear it?
I didn't know that my brother had developed a very good curveball. Almost too good, if you ask me. And here's the thing. He never told me about this change. And I never saw it coming.
Folks, change is a lot like a curveball. It doesn't occur in a straight line. It flows up and down. And so it's critical to understand what that change looks like. So as Brian said, he rolled out some of the learning objectives. I want to refocus us again. We're going to look at the 4 phases of change, the 9 common errors to watch out for when you're rolling out a major change within your organization. We'll look at the barriers to overcoming and creating lasting change. And just, one of my learning objectives for you guys is to start to look at it proactive versus reactive. Now, the stuff that we talk about, it's not rocket science. It's about change rolling in your organization. It's about being proactive versus reactive and having it at the forefront when you're starting to develop something new within your organization. The change up. Okay, baseball fanatics, we're going to use our chat button really here. Type in the chat box, what does this pitch do? The change up. And Brian, you can monitor the chat box for us and call them out if you have anything in the chat box. And we'll give you a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The changeup is one of the slowest pitches thrown in baseball, and it's predicated on deception. The changeup is a common off-speed pitch, and almost every starting pitcher owns a changeup as part of their arsenal. A good changeup will cause a hitter to start his swing well before the pitch arrives, resulting in either a swing and a miss or very weak contact. But see, here's the thing. When the hitter is able to identify that changeup, this pitch is almost the easiest to hit because of its low velocity or slow speed. Now, COVID-19 pandemic has given us curveballs, changeups, sliders, knuckleballs, you name it. It has thrown it at us and forced us to change within the industry. And when you don't have a game plan for that change, the majority of people will perceive change as deceptive in nature. All right, be ready for it. Here it comes. All right, there we go. Very good. Like the wave in baseball, change creates ripples, reaching distant spots within your organization. They disrupt departments, staff, customers, people well outside of your organization, especially if a change is directed right at your customer. I'll give you an example. We had a park that was getting ready to open, and right at the very end, we rolled out a whole new pricing structure before it opened. Very different what we had displayed in our marketing components. So needless to say, our customers were pretty upset when the customers found out the changes had been made without really looking or consenting on what their opinions were. So it can affect your customers as well as your staff and your employees within the organization as well. So how change affects us. Now, if you already haven't already, over 90% of organizations are planning to restructure the organization due to COVID-19. And we in Parks and Recreation are no different. Change often breeds a climate of mistrust and suspicion. People don't know where they stand. They get worried. Rumors fly, causing excitement, disruption, distress, and often a crisis within your organization. Now, here's the thing. Everyone looks at change in a little bit different way, and research has shown there's really two theories of thought when it comes to how the brain and body work when rolling that change or seeing how change is. And the first one is you either see it as a threat or you see it as a challenge. Now, those who see change as a threat will have a fight or flight mentality. Those who see it as a challenge have a growth mindset and see the opportunity to do something new. So you either see it as a threat or a challenge, and that's how change can affect us. So why is change so hard? Change is critical to implementing new programs, initiatives, ultimately to achieving your organization's success. Still, organizational change initiatives fail at an alarming rate of over 70%. Why is that? This is because most initiatives fail to consider how change affects the people in your organization versus the operations of the organization. So again, how it affects the people. Now, it's not that just people fear change. They undoubtedly do. And the longer you've been doing something a certain way, the better we perceive it. And the longer you've been doing it, we see it as, oh, it's a good way. So change isn't simply about embracing the unknown. It's about giving up something old and therefore good for something new and maybe good, possibly. Now, in a career spanned multiple generations and multiple revolutionary changes in baseball, Branch Rickey was always looking to innovate. A conservative and religious man who nobly refused to participate in the Sunday baseball game as a player and a manager. Rickey was anything but traditional in the way he approached baseball as an executive. Branch was the founding father of our modern day farm system for baseball. He established a batting helmet within the league for safety precautions. He was an advocate for the expansion into the new markets, most notably breaking the color barrier when he brought in a Brooklyn Dodger in 1947. All right, baseball fans and historians, put in the chat box, who did Branch Rickey bring in to the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947? And Brian, if you see anything in the chat box, please let me know and shout it out.
Jackie Robinson.
Yes, very good. Winner, winner. Those were Jackie Robinson in 1947. So why is change resisted? Fear of the unknown. There's a loss of control. Maybe you have a lack of skill towards the new training or the new computer skills that you need to do a new program. Lack of rewards. It's out of your comfort zone or poor timing. Plain and simple, change means work. Not only for the organization, but those who change is getting rolled out to.
You must learn to embrace change.
Can we change anything we want to change?
No, you don't get to say what the changes are. I do that.
Will that situation ever change?
No,
Why not? You said change is good.
change is good for other people, so embrace it or I'll fire you.
We love change.
If you don't know where you're going, you might wind up somewhere else. Yogi Bear. So as we progress today and in your organization, being proactive versus reactive is the clear vision to help you be successful. So here's the thing. I talked about the curveball in the beginning and how my brother threw the curveball, that special ball, to me, and I was unable to catch it. So when throwing a curveball, it really very similar, has 4 phases of the curveball. You got to have proper grip, you got to have motion, release, and follow through. And very similar to the change curve, it has 4 phases as well. And we'll look at those. And here they are right there, the 4 phases of change: denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. To accelerate change and increase its likelihood of success by using this knowledge of the change curve. With the curve, you can give individuals the help they need to be able to move forward. Now, this model was derived after a model of change in something that maybe we may be familiar with, and it was derived after, and that was derived after the changes of grief and death that people go through. So if you look at the top here, the 4 phases of change in this screen, you'll see again, denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. Those are the 4 phases of change. Now the graph at the bottom, the curve, those are the 5 stages of grief or death that people go through. And like I said, when you're talking about change, it could be really a death of the old way of doing it. So they're very, very similar in their retrospect: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So they're very on the same curve on what they are doing. So let's dive into the 4 phases a little bit deeper so we can look at some of the areas. So the first phase of change begins when people hear about change. This may take the form of a rumor, rumblings, maybe an actual announcement, or it may be a sudden, unexpected announcement of change initiative. Denial begins with the awareness change is on the horizon, and usually entails acting maybe if it isn't. Denial is a defense against change that takes the form of ignoring, not responding to information that demands the change. Denial attempts to preserve the success and comfort of the past by ignoring the signs that the change or the past is about to end. It's hard for people to spot people in denial in themselves because it's an inner attempt to protect ourselves from disruption. And on the surface, people in denial can appear calm and rational. So denial, what does it look like? People in denial use stalling techniques. They avoid the topic of change as much as possible. They act as if nothing is happening. They only do their routine work. They maybe fail to be curious or look outside of the narrow area of responsibility. They focus little on details and ask picky questions. They can blame outside forces or other difficulties. They can question the data or the method used to making the decision. And really, the consequences of denial is we're delaying the inevitable and the loss of opportunities to move forward and the undermining needs of change. Tips for dealing with denial. So many times leaders want their people to travel instantly over this chasm and feel like there's nothing without minimal disruption. It's difficult for people to accept denial phase in their employees because it makes them, as a leader, maybe out of control. So when you're looking at denial, it's also normal and predictable and sometimes even helpful. People are going to go through this stage. Most people will go at some point through this stage. People need to get time and used to this change. And then managing change is made easier when managers and leaders support through these stages. So, number 1, denial is a norm. They need time. You need to listen to them, support them, and again, no big swings. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in the future slides of no big swings on exactly how that is. There's a big trough, and you don't want to just jump right over the trough. You need to make sure you're going through the phases. All right, so let's look at phase 2. We're now from denial into phase 2. Resistance begins when people wake up from denial and they experience just how upset they really are. The change now becomes deeply disruptive and personally upsetting, overtaking the defenses of denial. One of the things that contributes to the feeling of resistance is the experience of a loss. And we talked about a loss during change. People may feel a loss of status, power, security, influence, maybe relationships. Some people may lose seniority or the value of what they've been doing in your organization, or just meaningful work. If you're reevaluating what people have been doing for the last 5-10 years and they've loved what they've been doing, that meaningful work may be reassigned. And so there's that loss. It's really hard for individuals to be talk themselves out of these feelings. Feelings of resistance are reasonable and they're realistic. People are being asked to make significant changes and cannot be assured of the outcome will be positive or that path will be easy for them. Here's the thing, in the contrast to denial, it's usually easy to recognize people in resistance because they have behaviors that are associated with them. So let's look at those behaviors. People in resistance, they ask, why me? What about me? They start to show anger to your organization, to your leadership. They doubt the wisdom in decisions. You start to see complaining. They believe the task is impossible. They feel overwhelmed and depressed. They refuse to go along with the change. They can become quiet and passive. They feel as there's nothing they can do, or they say this will never work. Those are some of the signs of people in resistance. What does resistance sound like? So these are critical keys when you're listening to what's happening and what stages they are. Is resistance sounds, oh, we've already tried that. We're just too busy. I need more information. Sure, we'll get right on that. Resistance is now not always out in the open, especially when your company doesn't like what they hear, and it tends to go underground or behind closed doors. And it can be expressed indirectly in those forms that we just talked about. We'll need more data. We're waiting for more input. So it's critical to listen for the phases as well as watch. Tips for dealing with resistance. Talking as a team and to other people about their feelings of resistance is a best strategy for the team. Teams should try to focus on what lies ahead and not what has gone before. So focus on the gains versus the losses. What do they get from this change versus what do they lose? Don't get angry for people feeling this way. Just as I associated the phases of change to the phases of grief and death, how many people are you going to try to talk people out of their grief that they've just went through their loss of maybe their grandmother or their mother? Keep those in mind. It's hard to talk people out of their feelings. Stay out of the negative cycle. All right, so we've gone through our first 2 phases. Now we're into phase 3 is exploration. People move into exploration when they acknowledge their feelings and accept that change is necessary and can be important, even if they don't personally welcome it. At this point, people are more halfway through the transition. They are ready to think about what they can do and what is possible. They decide to make the best of it, learn some new skills, seek some new ideas. Now, they may experience some chaos and overstimulation of discovery of change, maybe even overwhelmed. but they're ready to move forward. Exploration signals that shift in the brain from seeing it as a threat to seeing it as now more of an opportunity. So what are the benefits of exploration? People are finally ready to learn. Groups and individuals begin to consider what they can do versus what they can't do. People believe they can make it. And they're starting to see this energy started to release in this phase. Visually, you're going to start to see that energy released. What does exploration sound like? Let me see what I can do about this. Maybe there is a way to do this. We can make it work if we all pull together. I feel like the worst part of it is over. So again, here are some key listening aspects when you're going through those phases. As a leader, as a manager, you're looking for those and you're listening for those. Tips for dealing with exploration. Now here's the thing, not every member of your team will enter exploration at the same time. Some will take longer and others will zigzag between resistance, exploration, maybe even go back to denial. People who are more firmly anchored in exploration should help those who are stuck in resistance or denial. So relying on those other employees who are further down in the phases can help bring those people across. Now the leader or manager has to adopt a different role in helping people manage exploration, because in resistance, little more than listening sympathetically was needed to help people move through their feelings. In explorations, leaders need to become more the facilitator. Help people to focus their energy, deal with many of the opinions and choices that they have, and maybe avoid doing the first thing that comes to mind. Leaders need to help people work together to learn, plan, and develop their responses to this change. So, all right, we're going to do a little quiz here. And for those of you actually in Pennsylvania or in the Pittsburgh area, this is a picture of what field? This is Forbes Field, a baseball park in Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And what year was this facility built? And you can throw that up in the chat box. So what year did the facility start? If you know when it was taken out of service, you can throw that into the chat box as well. And Brian, if you get anything in there, please don't feel free to shout it out for us. Forbes Field.
Looks like you might be stumping people, but I know
All right.
It's PNC Park parking lot now.
I gotcha. So it was built in 1909, and its last game was in 1970. Now, if I stump people in that area, the first baseball game in 1909 and the last baseball game in 1970 was with what major league team? Throw it up in the chat box. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it was the Chicago Cubs, which is my home team. All right. So let's move on to phase 4 of the commitment. Commitment comes when people have learned new ways to go forward. They understand why they have gone through the change. They have accepted the change environment as maybe the new status quo, and it's hard for them to move backwards. But in all cases, commitment involves an acknowledgement of the change of the norm and the ability to function well within that new change environment. So you're definitely seeing it visually. What does it sound like? I've really come a long way with this change. I would really not like to go back to the old ways. Hey, I've mastered what needs to be done effectively. I'm comfortable with my new work environment. I've learned a lot of new things from this change and will help me to deal with that next change. So again, listening to what is happening within the organization, in your staff, or your outside customers as well. So people in commitment, they feel confident in control. They have worked to achieve success. They feel accountability for their results, and they know what they need to do now. And those benefits of reaching this stage 4 phase is now you start to see high performance. You see the desired results that you initially rolled out and wanted to have. And you can start to focus on the improvement within your organization and that what change brings to it. So, tips for staying within commitment. Organizations, managers, individuals need to recognize how difficult change is for people. You and your organization can't simply wish people to move quickly through change. You must provide tools and time for them to work through these phases of change. So being proactive versus reactive are going to help you to keep lasting change moving forward. So celebrate with them the little wins and the big wins. Reward them along the way and continue to support them. With these 3 items will help make sure that commitment is moving forward and sticks. So really quickly, this is Wrigley Field, one of the oldest baseball parks in the United States. So for us die-hard Cubby fans, and this is kind of a rendering of what changes have happened over the last 5 years with the Cubs. And for those of you die-hard Cub fans out there, it's kind of hard for us to see the old Wrigley Field getting changed and new scoreboards and you know, it's been hard, but change is constant, and they're still happening for us die-hard Cub fans. It's depressing at sometimes, but it's nice to see them moving forward in other areas. But change is constant. So how can we look at accelerating change? And we really have to look at how we reduce the time for disruption. Now, I talked about the trough, or talked about the leap over the chasm, and that's that area in the curve, that doubt or valley of despair. That's what we're trying to reduce. And more specifically, you can look at it here. You start to see more specifics: denial, anger, blame, doubt and self-blame, problem solving. So the quicker we move through this trough, the better we are. And so leaders who try to make this Tarzan swing across from elation to moving forward, you're going to hit a roadblock, and you're being reactive to the situation. It is the leader's responsibility to help guide people through these changes, some faster than others. Keep that in mind. Some are going to get stuck and need help going through there. Some are going to jump right over. Some people seem to believe that just because they're getting paid, that they can put their feelings aside. However, wishing doesn't overcome the transition process and can push it really underground. All right, so let's prepare our field for lasting change. And what are the questions to ask for before embarking on an organizational change? And I really see it, the number one is, why is this change necessary? Are we doing change for just because change? What is the roadmap for the change to happen? Where is our end result? And who does it affect? How can we make this new status quo in everyday life at our district? Lasting change comes from tapping into the consistent system to act, a strategy to follow through on your actions to help people focus. As a pitcher and a baseball player, if you're delivering a pitch, the pitcher needs to focus on a specific target to be able to hit it. So as you look at the screen here, I have one of the most important positions in baseball is your pitcher. And most teams have the most amount of players on there are pitchers. And so if you look at the pitcher's mound here, that is your number one. the rationale for change. Why are we changing? And then 2, you have your catcher. Who does the change affect? Because they're catching that ball. They're catching the change up. They're catching the change up.
And now the Mets will try and come from behind for him, but the bottom of the 7th.
Guess you better slow your Mustang down. Oh, what I said now. Mustang Sally now, baby. Oh, guess you better slow your Mustang down. Oh, yeah. You've been running on.
This is my favorite here.
Oh, guess I have to put your flat feet on the ground. What I said.
Hey, even the professionals make mistakes, but learning from those mistakes are critical to us being able to move forward. So let's look at the 9 innings of Major League errors. And as we go through these, I want you to kind of think or jot down on a piece of paper, has this ever happened to you in your organization? Maybe yes or no. Now, we're not going to discuss these at the end, but I want you to kind of go through the process. Why did it happen in your agency? And could you have prevented it from happening? All right, so those, just keep those in the back of your mind as we move through the 9 major league errors. Starting out with Major League error number 1, complacency. In baseball, complacency looks like this: getting picked off at first base. You got too many things on your mind, you're not being focused, or missing a base on a home run. That is complacency. Complacency is it's a feeling of quiet security, often while unaware of some potential dangers. We see it maybe as a smug satisfaction, or with a situation that is what we deal with every day. Complacency in your workplace looks like low performance standards, a lack of internal or external feedback. You're riding on your past successes. You cling to a status quo. Yes, we have problems. We've always had problems. That's complacency. Complacency can kill. So Blockbuster Video. At its peak, Blockbuster Video was making $8 million on late fees. That's correct. $8 million on late fees. Now, interesting enough, Reed Hastings started a little company because he hated late fees. This little company was called what? Throw it up in the chat box if you know it. Brian, if you have anything there, please share it.
I'm good at there, but I'm thinking it's Netflix.
Yes, thank you. Good call, Brian. The little company was called Netflix. Now, interesting enough, Netflix offered to sell to Blockbuster for $50 million. Now, who do you think won in that deal? Unwilling to change and complacency killed the chain because they said, we're good. We don't need what you have, Netflix. Now, interesting enough, I found in my research, the last Blockbuster was up in Alaska. And I believe that may have closed. But if you're interested in if you're maybe a millennial out there, the Blockbuster Airbnb is offering the Blockbuster experience. If you want to rent it out and rent a video and sleep overnight at Blockbuster, I think Airbnb has purchased one of those to do that. So that may be a neat experience.
They did have a good Twitter feed too.
Oh, very good. Major League error number 2, management. Who's on your team roster for rolling out this team initiative? Is everyone on board? this is your buy-in from your management. Sometimes management thinks change is easy and it takes no time at all. No! Change is hard and it takes a lot of effort and time. Although leaders can't always make people feel comfortable with change, they can minimize the discomfort. Diagnosing the sources of resistance is a first step towards good solutions. Any feedback from resistors can be helpful to improve the process and gain acceptance for this change. So who is your change leadership group? Major League Area number 3, vision. Vision plays a key role in producing useful change by helping you to direct, align, and inspire actions into part of a large group. But your vision needs to be clear, concise, and simple to follow, not too complicated. When you debates can lead to conflict and wasted time. If you look at this, a hitter has almost 400 milliseconds before they can hit a major league fastball. Understanding the power of vision. Major League Area number 4, communication. Meaningful organizations change can't occur without the cooperation of those stakeholders. Without credible communication, employees' hearts and minds are never captured. So I thought of 3 examples that you may see in your organization on ineffective communication. So a small group holds a couple of meetings and sends out a couple of memos on the change. Example number 2, executive director talks about change at a few meetings but doesn't have the buy-in from their managers. Or the HR director sends out an email at 5 p.m. outlining new changes to happen on Monday morning. Communication comes both in words and deeds, with the latter being more powerful. Major League Area number 4, ineffective communication of the vision. Major League Area number 5, roadblocks. In baseball, your roadblocks look like this. Your catcher crowd in the home plate. Organizational roadblocks are the biggest challenge that one needs to face when it comes to organizational change. Can structure undermine the vision? Absolutely. Vision comes more responsibility to those lower level employees. And, with structure of silos or poor communication prevents this from happening. You start to hear those words that we looked for in the beginning. We've never done it before. We've tried that before. Our company is different. It can't be done. We don't have the money and we don't have the personnel. Those are those obstacles to block your vision moving forward. Major League Area number 6 is your strategy. The best change program in the world won't do you any good if your organization doesn't have a strategy for getting there where it wants to go. By progressively planning your action, lack of communication of who, what, when, where, and why, and only focusing on the long term. Example of, I used to have a director that said, we're going to have a great new recreation center in 10 years. 10 years? I don't know if I could be around in 10 years. That's looking way too far beyond in the future. When we look at strategic plans, we're looking at more 3 to 5 year plans versus 10-year plans now. So only focusing on the long term. You need to go through the steps of the phases. Major League Area number 7, victory. Celebrating a win is fine, but declaring the championship title can be catastrophic. Until change sinks in deeply into your company's culture, a process that can take time. New approaches are fragile subject to regression, which is our Major League Area number 8 is regression, kind of moving backwards. And this is where the stumbling blocks start to happen. There's 2 important factors to institutionalizing change within your organizational culture. One, show it how it helps to improve. How does it improve the process? How does it improve your customers' satisfaction? How does it improve with staff? And then 2, invest sufficient time in making sure it anchors into the change. Major league error number 9, engagement. Successful change management happens at the bottom. Wow, this picture's blurry, huh? Leaders must actively involve people most affected by the change in its implementation. This will help ensure your employees at all levels of the organization embrace the proposed changes. Now remember, engage people at all levels of the organization. Do it with them and not to them. That is your major league error number 9, not involving your employees. Finding good players is easy. Getting them to play as a team, hey, well, that's another story. Now, we're almost about halfway through our program today, and most of you out there have probably been sitting down for the last at least 30 minutes. So we're going to do a little stretch here. So once you stand up out of your chair, stand up for real seconds, and we'll go through a little 7th inning stretch. 3. And for the diehard Cub fans, a little history. Jamie, I know this one is close to your heart. Remember, just get up, stand up, roll your neck a little bit, stretch it out a little bit. Let's root for the Cubbies. All right, a little history there, a little stretching out. Thank you very much. Organizational culture is like an iceberg with most of its weight and bulk below the surface. Actually, 80% of your company's culture is something that you can't actually see. And changing an organization culture is one of the most difficult leadership challenges out there. That's because an organization's culture comprises of interlocking, set goals, roles, processes, values, communication practices, attitudes, and assumptions. So let's jump into those. Culture is how organizations do things. The values and behaviors that contribute to your unique park district, your unique parks and recreation department, social and psychological environments of your organization. It's in large organizations, it's a little risky to think there's only one culture. There's actually many cultures, and especially when we talk about the silos. Each recreation department, or if you have multiple recreation centers, can have a different subculture. And that's why those cultures can be hard to change, groups and values. Sometimes if you have an organizational culture that's chaotic, it can be a lot easier to change versus an organization that has a very, very good organizational culture. Because again, it's back to rooted into, if things are going well, they must be right. What are the culture values in your organization? What values does your organization? These are things to think about when you're rolling out change. What are our culture and what are our values? What are our norms? The shared rules of value within that organization. What are the unwritten rules within your organization? In baseball, if a player from another team does something maybe not so good, it's pretty common to see the pitcher throw at him. It's an unwritten rule. I did see in the latest edition of Parks and Recreation Law Review The unwritten rule of comp time, which happened to get an organization in pretty hot water. What are your unwritten rules in your organization? What are the beliefs? Do you have old school beliefs or new strategic beliefs? What are your traditions? You know, in baseball, we have the traditional ceremonial first pitch. What traditions do you have at your organization? What are your perceptions of your staff, your employees, and your customers? Sometimes you'll get thoughts like, what is the upper management perception of your frontline workers? Or let's reverse that. What is the frontline workers' perception of upper management? By listening and addressing these perceptions will help you to establish a norm for moving forward in a change initiative. Feelings of negative or positive can take time to change. What are the feelings within your organization? Folks, I will tell you one of the easiest ways to repair a negative feeling is just by telling the truth and being honest with your staff, being honest with your customers. Can help to repair those negative feelings that are there. And again, as I related to that iceberg, they're not always at the surface. They're well below it. Now, for the majority of this workshop, and I know a lot of you out there are directors and above, but you know, this workshop has been focused on if you're rolling out change. Now, some of you out there, maybe a small amount, here are 3 ways to not strike out when change is happening to you and not by you. So number 1, if change is happening to you, I want you to find out everything there is to know about change from the most reliable source. That's number 1. Number 2, ask questions when you don't understand. Ask those questions because, you know, not all leaders know these different phases. And they're being more reactionary than proactive. And number 3 is take charge of your thoughts and actions. With the right attitude and actions, you will find opportunities in any change. So again, 3 ways not to strike out if change is happening to you and you're not leading it. To succeed in baseball, as in life, you must make adjustments. Change is constant, but you have to make those adjustments. Change is not an activity. It's a state of being. An organization that is adaptable to change is an organization that learns as it grows. So I want to take some time to go through these dimensions of leading change. And these are critical for you to be a success. Is number 1, modeling change. You can't expect your employees to change if you're not willing to have some as well. Number 2, communicate that change. Number 3, involving others in change. That's the buy-in. And helping people break out of the past. Of losing, that grief of losing something old and replacing something new. Number 5, creating a supportive learning environment. And that should be a goal for all departments out there, is to create a supporting learning environment. You want to be creative, you want to be innovative, you want to lead change, you should have a creative supported learning environment, just in general. Now, by focusing on these 4 phases of change and these 5 dimensions, you will be able to knock it out of the park. What you do speaks louder than what you say. Please remember that. What you do speaks louder than what you say. There are 3 types of baseball players. Those who make it happen, those who watch it happen, and those who wondered what happened. By the late, great Tommy Lasorda, who passed away last week. 3 final takeaways from this session when rolling out lasting change. Please, if you do nothing at all today and you don't remember anything, please remember these 3 final areas. Plan for and acknowledge the stages of change. Don't throw the curveball or the change up. Those are predicated on deception. All right, you don't want to deceive your customers. You don't want to deceive your employees or your staff. Communicate the 5 W's. Change with them, and don't just do it to them. If you keep those in mind, I'm 100% certain you will be successful. And now go knock it out of the park.
High in the air to center field, way back to the wall, and let's go flying with Marlon Byrd. Welcome to the Berg, Mr. Bird.
All right. I appreciate everyone joining me today. Let's move over to the live Q&A session of our presentation.
Please, anyone, if you have any questions for Gabriel, put them in the box there. But I know one thing that came to my mind is sometimes, especially on the operational side of things, maybe we see things from a different perspective than folks on the administrative side of things. Is there a best practice for communicating the need for change?
I think that's where that first step comes into is why are we doing it? You know, what is the benefits that rolling out a new change initiative is going to have? If you can figure out that why first, I think it's going to help be able to proliferate throughout and give you the roadmap to moving forward. If you don't know that why, and it's not, again, clear and concise, and you're able to communicate that why, then I think it's going to help you to make you successful.
And do you find there's certain ways to, use supporting data or, finding some of those? Because sometimes the why is not as explicit to everyone as it is in our own head.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it just makes sense to you, that's why error number 9 is, involving your staff and your employees around you. Leaders, by able to collaborate, and even if it's not within your organization, it's collaborating with other, maybe, Park Maintenance Institute fellow members there, and ask them, and you're kind of collaborating in getting other people's point of view on why you're rolling this out. Again, any kind of data helps you to make concrete decisions within your organization, or, it helps to support your decision for moving forward. If you see that 90% of your customers are using this one park versus another park, then that's good data for you to say, what, this park needs to be restructured, reorganized. You see that, only 100 people are visiting this park per year. Those are good data indicators of why something needs to change or something needs to happen within your organization. Again, getting the buy-in from your team members, your leaders, your managers are critical to being able to show your vision on why you need to move forward. If you can't communicate that why, I think you're gonna run into those barriers. We've done it the old way. The old way is not broken. If it's not broken, let's not fix it,
We did have a question in the box there. Erica missed one of the 5 ways to lead change. Maybe you can go back to that slide for her.
All right, so we have modeling change, communicating the change, evolving the other changes, and helping others break from the past. Now, a lot of our folks out there are within the parks maintenance, and you look at change. Change happens at an organizational rate. You're going to have change, whether you're the parks department, whether you're, administration. There are going to be changes, and just because you're out mowing the lawn, there's different ways of thinking about that. We've always done it this old way. Nowadays you have new tech that is mowing the lawn for you. You set up the little computer guy and he goes out there and mows the lawn. So that's a big change you may be leading in the future. Thanks to Jamie Sabak, you look at some of the backlog of maintenance out there. You look at Central Park that has a $6 billion maintenance backlog of things that need to happen. So there are a lot of change initiatives for us to be able to, get more cost recovery from moving forward and that buy-in for change. But it's it's not rocket science for you, and I wanted to critically show that we want to move from being reactive to proactive, and by looking at these 5 adjustments and those phases of that people are going to go through. They may skip around, but if you plan for those phases within your organization, again, it could be any department, anything that you're rolling out. If you look at those phases of change, which are very similar to grief, you're losing something, then I think you're going to be more successful. Any other questions we got out there, Brian?
Nothing coming up in the chat box there, but people can reach out to me and I can reach out to Gabriel to share your contacts and have folks get in touch. This was a great start to our year, focusing on trying to become a bit more proactive rather than reactive. And it's a great segue into our second shop talk we're going to be having towards the end of January on the 28th, looking at how can we measure things that are happening within our organizations, and how can we make sure that we're able to communicate our needs and our successes and share those great stories with the powers that be and the administrations that we have to sell our ideas to. So on behalf of the Pennsylvania Park Maintenance Institute, I want to thank everyone for participating today. We have recorded this, so I will be sharing this recording so that you can get this information out and share it with your colleagues and anyone that you feel has interest in this topic. And again, I will have some more data on Gabriel's contacts. And as you can see on the board there, he has his email. So reach out to him, reach out to me, and we hope we will host you again very shortly and see you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Brian. Have a great day now.